Gabriel, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Gabriel Aguiar. Thank you, Allan, for having me on your podcast. Great podcast, by the way. Yeah, I'm Gabriel Aguiar, founder of Golden Bug Studios, and I'm currently as well the founder of YouTube channel Gabriel Aguiar Prod, mostly focused on visual effects for games, real-time visual effects for games. And yeah, thanks, Allan, for having me.
No problem. It's great to have you. And I was curious, just starting out with your background, like, did you always imagine that you'd want to be in some kind of creative role growing up?
Well, yeah. Since little, I was always focused on the creative side of things. Always super curious on how things are made. And it's actually funny because you see, I was super curious in one of the areas you are an expertise, which is visual effects for movies, right? It always fascinated me, and I always wondered how it was made. And actually, everything started a little bit revolving around that area. But yeah, since a little kid, I always wanted to draw stuff and mostly practice drawing. I was fascinated by drawing as well. That's how everything started. And design, yeah, design is super important.
It's awesome. And I was curious, like, for you, like, how did you first get into 3D?
Yeah, actually 3D was one of the most fascinating things when I was 15, 14. And the first touch I had with 3D, it was actually by building a map to Counter-Strike 1.6 to CS. Yeah,
I was
it
just talking
was
about
like,
Counter-Strike 2 the other day. It's like, when are we starting a clan? Uh,
yeah, and it was fun because I was fascinated by the fact that we could actually make our own maps. Yeah, later on I went to design school to study architectural for interiors, this design interiors and exteriors, and yeah, that's when I dived really a bit more deep into 3D.
And that's cool. And yeah, obviously, 3D has evolved a lot over time, and it's definitely changed a lot, especially from Counter-Strike days. My first job was actually, I was talking about this the other day with someone, but it was on Team Fortress 2, which had a 10-year development cycle. So it started in 1996 and ended up coming out in 2006. Yeah, that was before the Counter-Strike craze that was going on. I was curious for you, like, when did you first launch your YouTube channel?
Yeah, YouTube was there's actually a very funny story behind YouTube. It was back in 2016 when I decided yeah, I'm gonna make a YouTube channel just to publish tutorials about pretty much everything that I know, since from Photoshop to Blender to I'll try to make a few tutorials about 3ds Max because I also used 3ds Max back in the day, but I mostly wanted to create tutorials revolving around the idea of teaching something to people. And yeah, actually one day, after doing a couple of Photoshop tutorials and Blender tutorials and Unity game engine tutorials, one day I was playing with Unity, and I stumbled upon particle system, and that's when I realized, oh, this is awesome. This is real time. This is visual effects for games. And I practiced a lot. I made my first tutorial back in 2017, 2018, more or less. And it actually went very well, the first tutorial. And that's how the channel evolved and grew. And eventually here we are today, me doing tutorials for visual effects.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And yeah, I was curious, like, how long did it really take to build traction? Were you posting for a long time before you build an audience, or did people kind of jump on it very quickly?
It takes some time, especially when it's like a niche, it's like a small area, and there's not many people looking to learn that kind of skills. Yeah, I started back in 2017, 2016, more or less, and I wasn't doing YouTube full time. I actually had a job, a full-time job. Yeah, and then one day I decided to quit my job, and because I thought I could use my time in a better way, and I went full-on mode YouTube, and I got a few freelance jobs along the way. Yeah, I focused really hard on YouTube, and then I eventually creating tutorials full-time, more or less in 2020. Yeah, so 3 years ago, more or less. And that's when eventually everything started to grow at a much more interesting rate, at least.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations, by the way. Yeah,
Thanks.
the videos look amazing. Definitely done a great job.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I try my best every time.
Most of the content that you're posting is for Unity, or are you trying, is it quite diverse, or what do you usually focus on?
I've been doing mostly Unity tutorials for game engine Unity, but I also made a course about Unreal Engine, Niagara particle system on Unreal Engine. As soon as Unreal Engine Niagara system was out, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I gotta make a course about this. And I find Unreal Engine to be super cool as well. But my main audience is Unity, so I'm like a little bit skeptical if I should do Unreal Engine tutorials or not. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if it's a good idea or not for the channel. I actually got many requests of people asking me, when do you do a tutorial in Unreal Engine? You know, you should really make a few tutorials, and it would be awesome.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the information tends to translate over pretty well. Trying to build out a character pipeline at the moment for V-Ray and Max, but I was looking at Maya stuff just to get a bit of reference, and it's kind of the same stuff, the theory and everything else in between. I guess like for you using Unity, like, and having experience in Unreal, like, what's your take on the two? Like, how do they compare from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a very common question, and I'm always fascinated by both engines actually, and I find them to be, specifically talking visual effects terms, I find them to be quite similar, especially when it comes to tools like VFX Graph or Niagara. They tend to have both pretty much the same concepts and the same keywords. It's pretty much the same ideas behind the both particle systems, and it's actually very easy. I get many questions, many times the same question, if people should learn Unity or Unreal, and I always pretty much say the same thing, which is, you guys focus on whichever engine you feel more comfortable, because it doesn't really matter what you are going to learn. You can apply it in different game engines without much of a problem. Obviously, now if someone asks me, I always tend to tell them, yeah, go learn Unity. Pick up Unity, because yeah, my channel is mostly focused on Unity. But I have a lot of respect for Unreal Engine actually, and they are both actually similar, I would say.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Some of the character work coming out of Unity I've been really blown away by. I'm friends with Ian Spriggs, who does a lot of photoreal character portraits, and he works for Unity as well. So yeah, it's been pretty fascinating. It's also interesting just to see the growth that both engines have had over the years.
Yes, indeed. It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, Unreal is a little bit... Unreal is kind of a few steps ahead of Unity when it comes to super realistic stuff. Actually, it's amazing actually what Unreal Engine has been doing. Epic.
I think both has been interesting from the sidelines, because I don't really work in video games. I have done a few here and there, but yeah, even just kind of seeing the technology that's innovating all the time, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, just following the industry, it's amazing. Actually, I got many people just watching my tutorials, but they don't understand visual effects. They just want to watch the content, the first 2 minutes, the show off, and the tutorial, they leave it to other people. But it's amazing to see both game engines evolve so much throughout this time. It's actually...
I guess for you, creating a lot of content for YouTube, doing courses and running studio, how do you manage your time in a way that you can do all these different things? Because obviously any of those can take up all of your time. For you, how do you kind of find balance or create pockets of time to do all these different things?
Actually, my schedule, is super tight, but I guess that's how it is for most of the people nowadays. If you want to do something right and have something, word, it's super tight schedule. I'll always it's like every 2 weeks I publish a tutorial, right? So before the tutorial, there's like 3-4 days that I'm completely focused on the tutorial, on what I'm going to do. 3-4 days is mostly the time that I use to do tutorial. I got a tutorial coming out on Tuesday, so it's Sunday. I start on Sunday, and then Monday, and then Tuesday is the day I publish. and then the rest of the week is focused on nowadays it's been focused on developing Rabbit's Tale, which is a game we are developing here at Golden Bug Studios. It's a Metroidvania. That on itself, it's an amazing amount of work that needs to be constantly I need to be constantly on top of that of the team, which everyone is doing, and it's basically a producing job, like a producer job, game producer job. I need to understand what everyone is doing, and we need to plan very well, very carefully our timeline, and see if nothing derails. I obviously tell everyone to experiment. If you need to experiment, feel free to experiment new stuff. That's totally fine. But when it comes to planning, like for example, new mechanics for a game, we really need to spend a lot of time planning. So there isn't a moment where we are developing like a new mechanic, and after 2 months or 3 months we are like, this doesn't fit, and we have lost 2 or 3 months. But I always encourage experimentation and learning. If you guys want to watch the tutorials, if you guys want to watch courses, feel free to do it. Learn something new, totally fine. It's a lot of planning indeed when it comes to having the timelines right, because sometimes there's someone that is going to enter at a certain stage of the game, like we are developing level design, and it's everything rough edges, everything is rough, everything is very basic, there's no art. But someone, in my case it's me doing the level design, and then comes Marisa, which is the responsible for the art, and she basically needs my job to be done before she goes in and puts the art, and we need to test a lot before that. So everything needs to fit very well. Each piece needs to fit very well before. I always tell people it's like a factory. If there's a little piece missing, it's gonna cause problems later on, definitely. So
it's interesting because it's waterfall. So waterfall is kind of a conveyor belt where it's one thing gets done and then it gets handed to the next person. So it sounds like you're running the studio, but you're also working on the computer doing actual art or design as well. I just recently kind of moved into a role of being VFX supervisor as well as head of CG, and also being an artist, which I won't lie, like every single day that's a struggle. There's definitely days, sometimes weeks, where I might open up a software program and that's as far as I get for the entire week. Was I opened the product and I never actually did anything. So
it's super hard to have time for everything.
Yeah, what's the head count for your studio currently? Like, how big are you guys?
We are not big. We are really small. We back in last year we were 5. Now we are 4, and I'm seeking out a 3D artist because I got another project going on and I need a 3D artist. But yeah, we are currently 4 with me. A very small team. We started a year and a half ago, 2021. Yeah, pandemic was still going on. Not as strong, but pandemic was going on. We are small. We are starting from scratch, at least in the gaming, at least in publishing games and developing games. We are starting from scratch, which is awesome. It's a passion for me. Starting from scratch. I know you, Allan, know how it is. I'm sure you know how it is to start something from zero. It's awesome to see it grow.
Yeah, it's exciting. It can be overwhelming.
It's exciting, yeah.
I was curious for you, like, what was that like? Just the idea of like, hey, I want to go do this, and then turning that into a reality. I'm kind of curious for you, like, was that intimidating, scary? What were the first steps that you took to begin building out your studio?
Yes, it was a little bit intimidating at the beginning, especially when, well, we need to be very careful in terms of financial terms. So I had to plan before 2021. This was a long process of basically self-funding and gathering the resources that I need to make sure that we are good to go for like 2 or 3 years. But it was a lot of the times I was wondering myself, so how is this going to happen? This is one of the things that I definitely want to do, which is develop games, and I've studied game development, and it was always one of my main goals to publish games, to develop games. So once I knew what I wanted, I was definitely on track to figure out a way of doing it. And I realized that after quitting my job, I realized that publishing tutorials was not where the money was coming from. All of the money was coming from, definitely. But I eventually got freelance jobs, and that helped me for some time between 2018 and 2019, more or less. It was 2 years of freelance. And then I eventually realized that, yeah, this is not also going to help me get to the point where I have a studio. Yeah, I eventually realized that I need passive income. You always have to bet on a lot of passive income, several passive incomes, so you can have the financial situation where you are a little bit more comfortable. So yeah, it takes a lot of time, a lot of years to have a good financial stability. But that was my main focus: publishing assets, publishing courses, and helping a lot of people with developing their skills in terms of VFX and mentoring. That was mostly the process of funding Golden Bug Studios. Yeah, it's all independent. We don't have any publisher, no investors. It's all
yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, at the same time, it's got to be intimidating from time to time to realize it's going to fall on you. Yeah, like what was it like in the early days of getting off the ground and getting things moving? Because obviously working for yourself is one thing, but having other people and managing them, and just, as you mentioned, making sure that the time that you allocate is going to the right areas. So that way you're not spending 3 months on something and then realizing, oh, this isn't going to work. Curious, like in the early days, like what was that like for you?
Our process here in the beginning was definitely, we spent like a lot of time, more than a week, probably 1 week. That all we did all day was planning, especially getting the timeline right and trying everyone to see how much time it takes to do something, how much time it takes to accomplish this mechanic or something like that. That was one of the first steps. It eventually helped us realize how much time we need for each task, obviously. But the most intriguing part was finding the right people, you know. The other day, someone asked me, "Are you comfortable in Portugal with the talent and stuff like that?" And people, and I said, "Yeah, I'm super comfortable. I studied and I've worked with many professors and many people that have so much talent, and that was one of the things that never worried me to find talent." And that was actually a very easy step, let's say. I interviewed people, I interviewed programmers, I interviewed artists, marketeers, and it went smoothly. I was amazed by the talent we have here. And so that was one of the steps that was easier. Another step that was a little bit not that hard was the bureaucratic part of funding a studio. That's a little bit more complicated, but I guess that's how it is in pretty much everywhere. Yeah, the most scary part was definitely the financial situation. If making sure I had to calculate everything, make a lot of calculations, make a lot of statistics. I mean, a lot of planning on how is it going to go in the first year, in the second year. What if it doesn't go like that? We need a plan B. Okay, so plan B is going to work in this way. We are maybe going to stop to work on the game and focus on developing other stuff. Yeah, so I have to brief everyone that, yeah, guys, we are going to develop a game, Rabbit's Tale, you know how it is. We are indie, we are completely independent, but if we eventually need to change our focus on projects, get ready, it may happen. But do not worry, do not be scared or something like that. Not worry, we are okay. But it's a plan B that you guys should be aware of.
Yeah, it's important to pivot when you need to.
Exactly. It's super important. Yeah.
I was curious, like, just to talk about that for a second, in terms of business, like, did you look into that a bit, like learning how to run a business, or more kind of learn as you go? Just in terms of, as you mentioned, about calculating your runway and understanding your burn rate, understanding what goals you're trying to hit, but also being able to measure everything so that way you know that you're on track to do everything within the timelines that you're doing. Was it something that was more learn as you go, or were you also either seeking out mentors or learning from courses or books and things like that as well?
Yeah, that's a great question actually, and for everyone who wants to build a company, I highly recommend to read a lot of books. That's what helped me, definitely. Reading a lot of books and seeing a few talks online, that eventually helps. But for me, what works eventually for everyone has their own thing. But for me, it was definitely books. I have a couple of books. I can see your bookshelf, and I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, it's getting insane. I've got books like in piles on the ground and also on my desk as well. So
I can see that you enjoy reading as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been fascinated with the business side of things, and yeah, just in general, I see a lot of correlation between all businesses, but also just in general, like the more that you get into business, the more you understand relationships are important. Like there's so many aspects that I think it's just really critical to dig your head into. And I was curious for you, like what are some of the go-to books? Like were there any that really moved the needle for you?
One of the greatest book I've read is Grow and Think Rich. I believe it is.
I think you grew rich. Yeah.
I think that's
Napoleon
it.
Hill.
Yeah, exactly. I found the book to be quite interesting, actually, super interesting. Another super awesome books in terms of leading with people. It's how to influence, how to gain friends, and how to influence people, something like that.
How to gain friends, influence people, and Think and Grow Rich are typically in everyone's top 5. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there are books around these days on like how to launch an indie studio, things like that. But at the same time, there's not really been that much really in terms of how to launch a film studio or how to do this or that. But at the same time, like most businesses under the hood function the same somewhat, and I think it really comes down to the model you're going for in terms of size. Like I think that really matters the most. Like I've worked at $100 million companies that are larger headcounts and they move a lot slower, but obviously they got a lot more runway behind them so they can do that. But then when you're 5 people, you've got to function very differently. Everyone needs to wear full hats.
Actually, one of the books that I was trying to mention, it talks exactly about that, the size of the company. It's really influence how you manage the company. If it's 5 people or 100 or 200 people, it's going to be totally different in terms of communication, especially in communication. And I can speak with everyone super quickly and brief them on whatever it is. We can have meetings in a much easier way. But when it comes to larger companies, that's different. That's very different.
Yeah. It's scary, but like Facebook or Meta, it's like Mark Zuckerberg's getting flack because he's laying off 10,000 people via email, which is crazy. Is shitty. But at the same time, it's also, I thought about it last night. Like, well, how would you do it? You bring in a lot of. There's a book I read which was on executive consultants once. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was basically explaining kind of like the Bobs from Office Space, who they come in to evaluate the company and look at what fat they can cut from the company, and it's got to be a pretty crappy job to come in and do that. When you're 10,000 people, it's going to be a lot of one-on-ones. At the same time, like knowing that you're still making time to do tutorials and do a lot more, like how important do you think it is for artists to give back, to help others who perhaps aren't where they want to be in their career or in their skill sets yet?
I always enjoy to help out people, definitely. That's one of the main goals of my YouTube channel, to help out artists, young artists, find their way in such complicated industries, in the movie industry, or in this case, the gaming industry, which they are such huge fields of knowledge. It's one of the most rewarding feelings that I can get when I get an email from someone saying, hey, you helped me out get a job in this company or in that company. For me, it's one of the most important things. It's to help out another human being develop their career and give them a little bit more confidence, especially in such a big industry. Some people really get lost. Sorry, one of the books that I was trying to mention earlier is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And it's from Ben Horowitz. It's actually awesome, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I haven't heard of it, so I'm curious to look at it myself.
Yeah, he speaks about really the hard things of hard things, of running when things go sideways, how to deal with it. Yeah, it's
So
very
critical because this is stuff that most people don't talk about.
Sometimes they talk about motivating, but the art, when something goes sideways, how to deal with that.
Business Made Simple is really good. Like, it's one of those books that I've recommended to a lot of people because
Okay.
yeah, I just found like it is really candid about a lot of the things that usually people don't really elaborate on enough. And yeah, I just found it to be really fascinating being able to pick that up and just kind of read a chapter here and there as I go.
Okay.
It always felt like it was the right chapter at the right time. So yeah,
Yeah, that's great when we are reading a book and we are feeling like, yeah, this is exactly what I needed to hear.
exactly. I was curious, like the game you're developing, do you want to elaborate a little bit more about that?
Rabbit's Tale is a Metroidvania game, and it basically very simply tells the story of a rabbit that loses his family because of an oppression that is going on, and he goes on an adventure. And it's essentially a Metroidvania, but mixed with another genre that we cannot reveal at the moment. It's going to be a little surprise, and we are trying to come up with something innovative and different, and we are super eager to show more to people. We are always publishing on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok, everywhere. You know, it is nowadays. We gotta publish. We gotta keep on posting everywhere on social media. And if anyone wants to follow or see, it's Rabbit's Tale, and it's from Golden Bug Studios. And yeah, we are developing more or less. We are in development a year and a half, 2 years more or less. And we have a great artist, which is Marisa. It's actually my girlfriend, and she is doing an amazing job when it comes to art. And yeah, that's one of the things that we have been praised the most, the art, the style, the art, the aesthetic of the game. Yeah, I don't know if you want to know more about it, if you have more questions about it, sure.
Yeah, I was curious too, like I guess when you are starting a new game, like for you, what's the experience been like to get eyes on it? Like I think we're really fortunate in a lot of ways right now that people can create game studios and make games
Indeed, yeah.
fairly easily, but at the same time it creates a lot of noise which you need to rise above, which actually Donald Miller's book on creating story brand could be applicable to that, you know, in terms of building that narrative. I remember there's a few companies that I'd work for back in the day or help out with that they're trying to launch a game studio in the 90s, and not having a physical office was always something where investors would always be like, well, if you don't, you know, you're not a real company if you're on the internet. And obviously that's not the case anymore. And if anything, it means you are able to leverage having smaller margins, less overhead. You don't have you do have access to worldwide talent, which is amazing. It's obviously it's great having local talent in Portugal too. I was curious for you, when building your company, and as you mentioned, getting a lot of positive feedback, how easy or how have you gone about trying to get people aware of the game that you're building?
Well, it's definitely not an easy process. Like you said, there's a lot of noise in the industry, and well, we try to stand out by doing something different. It's essentially a marketing strategy that nowadays many indie developers take, which is from early development stages, show off the game as much as you can, even if it isn't something super interesting. At least we are building an audience, and that's one of our main focus right now, which is definitely publishing something new every week, at least 2 times. Well, you know, we have a few social marketing strategies that we are always trying to follow, and developing a Steam page. Like I said, nowadays it's much easier than in the 90s or in the early 2000s. And yeah, there's a few strategies that are very interesting to pick up on early stages of game development. For example, now on my YouTube channel, I'm going to start publishing a little bit more on the game development side, on devlogs, indie game devlogs. They are very interesting topic. Some people find it very interesting and they follow, and you eventually gain an audience. So yeah, there's a few strategies that we try to take on, And well, we pray for the best. We are doing our best, and let's hope everything gets on tracks. Obviously, we are not expecting to publish the next RE game or or something that big, but we gotta start somewhere, you know. And we are trying, take a step at a time, take a day at a time, and not worry too much if this is going to be a massive success, because sometimes worry is very bad for
enjoy the
for
journey
team.
rather than trying to
Exactly.
fixate on like we need to get
You
to
said
here.
it better. You said it better. Yeah, exactly.
Is there any technology or anything that you're keeping your eye on, or you know, even recently came out that you've been really impressed with that you want to share?
There's something crazy going on every week, but the first thing that came to mind is I guess it's a little bit on everyone's mind, which is AI technology, artificial intelligence technology, which made a very big leap forward. And it's making awesome progress. It's a little bit scary at times, I gotta say. I guess at least with people that I talk, that's the feeling everyone has, and I got the same feeling. It's a little bit scary, but very entertaining at the same time. It's a bittersweet. Besides AI, which is now trending everywhere, I always like to keep an eye on Unity game engine and Unreal game engine. Yes, definitely, and some other software that we use to develop visual effects, like Substance Designer and Material Maker, which is a very small software that's awesome to develop textures for visual effects.
Yeah, check that out too.
Yeah,
I haven't been doing much 3D the last probably 5 or 6 years, and then just recently, I've been having to dive into motion capture and character pipelines and a lot of stuff, and it's been fun because suddenly I'm looking into a lot of things and trying to build out whole workflows for doing photoreal characters, and it's kind of been fun just going to go down a rabbit hole and learn something new rather than kind of getting stuck in the same stuff that I'd usually be doing. So
I found that to be very refreshing, sometimes getting out of our comfort zone and trying to learn something that is not our pleasure field, our lane.
Absolutely. But this has been really great. And where can people go to find out more about you, as well as more about your studio and your game?
You can find my YouTube channel, Gabriel Aguiar Prod. I know it's a little bit harder to pronounce. I should have come up with a better name.
Everything.
If you Google Gabriel Aguiar, you'll find eventually something, I guess. And Golden Bug Studios and Rabbit's Tail, you guys can always Google that. You'll eventually find a website or our Steam page or our Twitter or Instagram or whatever you guys feel more comfortable surfing nowadays. And TikTok, and yeah.
Well, I'll definitely link to everything in the show notes, but this has been really great, Gabriel. Appreciate the time, and it's been really fun.
Well, it's me who appreciate the invite, Allan. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. It was really fun. And your field of area is always something that have fascinated me as well. And it's two very interesting fields. I find visual effects for games and visual effects for movies. It's actually a very interesting field. So thanks for having me.